Hi, this is Shrikant, and through this video, I want to give a quick overview on .NET Core and dockerizing .NET Core and running a very simple web API. So that's the agenda for today's video. Build a sample web API .NET Core, dockerize it, and push to the Docker Hub. There's no PPT here, it's all about demo. So just a brief about myself. I'm the co-founder of TechShots. I'm an independent consultant. Um, so you can reach me anytime at my email address, phone number. The, the sample you can feel free to download. I'll continue to add more samples on the Git link that I've provided here. So let's get back to the Git link, and where we have a very simple web API. What you see here is an articles controller. Feel free to download. All you need is, once you download this API, you install .NET Core, be it on Mac, be it on Linux or Windows, so you're all good to go. So once you install .NET Core, you have this web API, which is fairly straightforward, has a couple of action methods. We are good to go and execute that. So let me go to Visual Studio Code. I already have Visual Studio Code running. So let me set a breakpoint. Uh, let me set a breakpoint here, and let me run this. There you go. So we're all set, and we're able to see the result here. So what we did is, for the test purpose, we've just gone ahead and added a couple of article resource objects, and we're just returning back in the context of dockerizing this particular web API. Now that we have this web API, I have a Docker file with me. Just to give a heads up, if you don't have Docker installed, again, very simple and straightforward steps to install Docker. You can either install it on a Windows, Linux, or a MacBook. So once you have Docker installed, you can go to the terminal and do as simple as docker info. That should get you all the information about your Docker, your Docker version, things like that. And if I do a Docker images, that should show the list of images that I have. So right now I only have the public image, the Microsoft .NET image with me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to build a Docker image for the web API that I showed you just now. To do that, the most important part is the Docker file. We will talk more about Docker file in subsequent videos, but for the sake of simplicity, we have a very simple Docker file, and we say, hey, I want to start off with building from this base image, which is Microsoft.NET SDK, and then my work directory would be the application, and I want to go ahead and copy the entire content and do a .NET restore inside my Docker container, and that should go ahead and build me everything. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a runtime for it. So once I have this runtime, I say I have this as my entry point. My entry point is a .NET Core library, and I want to go ahead and use the simple web API that we have built just now as an entry point for my container. Alright, so once we have this Docker file, let me go ahead and try to build it. To build the Docker file, we have a very simple command. We have a docker build -t is tag. So I want to call it a simple web API v1 dot talks about what is my context to build this. So when I do this, I'm sure it should give me an error, say that, hey, I don't find the Docker file. The reason is Docker file is in a very different path. So let me go there where I have my Docker file. So if I do an ls here, so you should see a Docker file here. So now let me go ahead and do the same command, docker build -t simple web API. This is all it says, is I want to call this particular image a simple web API, and I want to tag a version to it. So I want to tag it version v2, and Where is my Docker file? My Docker file is right in the same folder, so I use that as a context. So when I do that, you should see goes through the different steps what I just showed you as part of the Docker file, and it's going ahead and restoring these packages for you, and it's basically going ahead and building this image. Yeah, as you see, the Docker is going ahead and restoring um, all the .NET Core components, and once the restore is done, we should be able to see the new image in a while. Okay, so there you go. You see that we have successfully built an image and it's been tagged as Simple Web API version 2. So now if I go ahead and do a Docker images, you should now see that we have a new image, Simple Web API with version 2 that was built few seconds ago. So now that we have this image, we can quickly see if this image is running okay. So what we can do is we have a command to run this particular Docker uh, image. So let me go ahead and use this, and we now call it as v2. So all we say is, hey, I want to run this image, I want to go ahead and use port 8082 of my local host and map it to port 80. I want to name this as Simple Web API, and the image that I want to run is Simple Web API v2, and -it says I want an interactive session with that particular container, so we can see what's happening once we get onto the bash of that particular container. -rm is basically removes there is any running container, and then run it again. So now you see we have this particular content that's been coming out from the container bash. So we say, hey, this is running on port 8080, and now my Docker container is up and running. So if I do a Docker ps, you should see that I have Simple Web API version v2 up and running since 23 seconds. So now how do I test it? So now I can go to Postman and I have this Docker article which is I'm running on port 8082, and you should see that it should give back the data, and if I change this to say 8081, you wouldn't get anything because we're not running it on 8081. So what I can do quickly is, while this is running, I can start another instance of the same container running on 8081. Map it to 88, map it to port 80 of the container. I can say name it as Simple Web API new, and the image is Simple Web API v2, and you should see there's another instance running, and now I should be able to hit my container on 8081 as well. There you go. Now if I open a new window and then do a Docker ps, now I should see there are two containers running, one that was up 22 seconds ago and the other one is up about a minute, and both are quite healthy. So I can now go ahead and stop this running container by doing a Control-C and stopping this as well. Then I do a Docker ps, I should see there are no containers running again. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and push this container to my Docker hub. So I have a Docker hub that's running here. My Docker hub, it's a public hub. Anybody can go ahead and pull this container. So I'm going to push a new version v2. I have v1 here, and I'm going to push a new version v2 to this particular repository, and we will see how that can be utilized from an EC2 instance. Alright, so let me go ahead and do a tagline to that. So if I do a Docker images, Now you see we have a simple web API v2 image. So what I can do is I can do a docker tag. I want to tag simple web API v2 as my repository name, uh, simple Srikanth and a good simple web API. I want to tag it as v2. So now if I go, I would see that the same simple web API is referenced with the another um, tag Srikanth and a good simple web API. I can go ahead and push this. So I can do a docker push Srikanth and a good slash simple web API v2. There you go. So now you should hopefully see that, but you see there's a request access because I have not logged in. So let me quickly log in and then do a push again. Okay, there you go. I have just logged into my uh, Docker hub, and then I could go ahead and push this particular image to my Docker hub. So now if I go back to my Docker hub and if I do a refresh, I should now see a new repository with should see the repository with an updated tag v2 that was just pushed a few seconds ago. So now what we are going to do is we can go ahead and connect to an EC2 container that I have. If you see, I have an EC2 container running. So what I'll do is I'll connect to the EC2 container, and then I can do a Docker images here, and you see I don't have any image here, so I can do a quick login as well to this particular I don't think I need to do a login because this is a public repository. I can do a Docker pull to pull the same container from um, the repository that I just pushed. So let's see if this works. Okay, I think I spelled it wrong, so let me go ahead and try pulling this again. The pull is happening. Yeah, as you see, we just downloaded a new image that I just pushed to the repository. So I can do a Docker images now, and you should see this new image that is up and running. So what I'll do now is I'll do the same command. I'll run it over port 8080. That is what I have mapped in my EC2 to access it outside. And my image is now Srikanth and a good slash simple web API, and it's v2 tag, and there you go. So it's all running, and we can go to the Postman and try to connect to the same article on port 8080, and you should see that you should get back the result. So it's pretty simple and straightforward to go ahead and you know um, use dotnet core API to dockerize it, push it to the Docker hub, and you should be able to consume that from any dockerized environment. I hope you enjoyed the article, and we'll see add more videos, and looking forward for more learning. Thanks.